Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Very nice.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Zoe. That was wonderful. I liked your tune also.
Thank you.
It was very lively tune. Thank you for it.
And now we have a lot of young kirtaniers who are like, 8 hours or 6 hour kirtan. There's so many of them.
We can.
Yeah.
They're also enthusiastic and melodious.
Yeah. So, okay.
Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. So we'll continue with the discussion on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langati Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam. The 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is titled as Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. This comes in the third and the final section of the Bhagavad Gita, that is the Gyan section. So if you remember, when we initially had a discussion on the Gita, we had said that the 18 chapters are divided into 3 sections of 6 chapters each. The first 6 chapters talked about karma. Second 6 chapters talked about bhakti from chapter 7 to 12. And then the last 6 chapters from 13 to 18, they talk about Gyan. So this is the mnemonic for the 6 chapters. Let's see the title of the 6 chapters. The 13th chapter which we are doing today is Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. The 14th chapter is the 3 modes of material nature. The 15th chapter is the Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottam Yoga. This chapter is also studied during Adhik Mas. So we have recently finished Adhik Mas, starting Kartik Mas. But in the Adhik Mas, it comes once in a little over 3 years. There are devotees who make a practice of studying this chapter every day. 16th chapter is the divine and demoniac nature. The 17th chapter is the divisions of faith. And the final 18th chapter is the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. So as you can see that these chapters are all pretty small, with the exception of the last chapter, which is a summation of the Bhagavad Gita, kind of a counter to the second chapter. The second chapter is a summation from an introductory perspective, and the 18th chapter is a summation from a conclusion perspective. But they're also a little different in the sense that Krishna has spoken about everything and is speaking from that perspective. But otherwise, you see that most of these chapters are 20 plus verses. So these are the 6 chapters, NTY, DDC. So previous 12th chapter, some of the things to memorize. So the 3 sections in the 12th chapter were about bhakti. Essentially, the 12th chapter title is devotional service. Then we talked about the yoga ladder. And then we talked about the qualities that are conducive to progression. Then at the beginning of the 12th chapter, Arjun requests for clarification. And the clarification he asks is that which is better, being attached to the personal form or the impersonal Brahman. And the reason he asks it is that as a devotee, he was attached to the personal form. But in the 10th chapter, he had seen Krishna's Vibhuti Yoga, his form in material nature. 11th chapter, he saw Krishna's Vishwarupa and Kalrupa. So they are all different aspects of the impersonal form. And then he asked that which is better, that is the personal form better or the impersonal form better. And Krishna, of course, clarifies that while both are transcendentalist, the devotees are dearest to him. And then he explains the yoga ladder, which has 6 rungs. The bottom 3 rungs are Nishkam Karma, Brahmagyan, and Astangi Yoga. So Krishna speaks about Nishkam Karma, begins to speak about in the 3rd chapter. And 4th chapter, he talks about both Nishkam Karma and Brahmagyan. 5th chapter is also Nishkam Karma. 6th chapter is Astanga. So these are the bottom 3 rungs of the yoga ladder. The top 3 rungs are at the top is Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service, which is called Ananya Bhakti. Then next to it is Sadhana Bhakti, which is devotional service performed externally. And then we have Karma Yoga, which is working in Krishna consciousness. Then why does Krishna recommend Bhakti? Because it's direct path. Rather than going through these successive rungs, each one of them is difficult. Each one of them has an exit ramp, which means that a person can be misdirected. One can take directly to bhakti, and it's easy and safe, and best of all, it's pleasing to Krishna. So he reciprocates. We saw in the 9th chapter how Krishna over and over promised that he's partial to his devotees. He carries what they lack, preserves what they have. 10th chapter in the Chaturshloki, he says that how from within he gives them the understanding to come. So Krishna is very actively participating, something that is not there in the other aspects of practice. What quality does Krishna appreciate the most? And this is the quality which is being fixed in devotion to him. Okay, quick summary of the chapter that Arjun requests Krishna to clarify, which is who is superior, the impersonalists or the devotees. Krishna states that the devotees are dear to him, and the path for the impersonalists is long, difficult, and uncertain. And we looked at the many reasons that they have to suppress their senses, control their desires, and work against the nature of the soul. So even if they succeed, the successes can be temporary. So Krishna talks about the yoga ladder to put in perspective everything in relation to bhakti. So Arjun might ask that if you say bhakti is the only way, then why do you speak of so many other paths? So to explain that, he talks about the yoga ladder, that there are some people who cannot take to bhakti. And of course, Krishna does not want to abandon them. So he has other ways to engage them, and then they can make gradual advancement. So beginning from the top rung, these are the 6 rungs on the yoga ladder. At the top is Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service, Sadhana Bhakti, Bhakti in practice, Karma Yoga, acting to please Krishna, Astanga Yoga, which is meditation on the Paramatma, Brahma Gyan. Brahma Gyan is actually the position of the impersonalists, and then Nishkam Karma, acting without desires. And then even below this, Krishna does not talk directly, is below Nishkam Karma, Sakam Karma, which is working with material desires, Karma Kand. That's the focus of the third chapter, working full of material desires. And even below that is Vikarma, which is doing sinful activities, which actually has no place in the ladder, because ladder means that if there is a rung, it's leading to another higher rung. But Vikarma is actually more downward ladder. After that, one descends. So Krishna then talks about the qualities that are dear to him, and devotion, but bhakti is most dear to him, since all the other qualities that are manifested through Nishkam Karma, Brahma Gyan, Astanga Yoga, all these qualities, they automatically manifest through the quality of devotion. Okay, so this was the verse. This is the last verse of the 12th chapter, Hetu Dharma Artham Idam. Do we have a volunteer for the verse?
Prabhu, can I?
Absolutely, Mataji.
ये तु धर्मामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपश्यते साधना श्रद्धाना मत्परम भक्ता तेति वा मे प्रियः.
Very good. Very good. And do you want to go for the translation?
Oh, okay, Prabhu. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and have complete faith in me and make me the supreme goal are very, very dear to me.
Thank you. So we had commented that Krishna uses this superlative in extreme when he says Bhaktas te ativa me priya, extremely, extremely dear. So when one takes to the path of transcendence, the person becomes dear to Krishna. But when one takes to the process of bhakti, then the person becomes very, very dear to Krishna. And that's why we see him reciprocating so actively. So with that, we can start on the 13th chapter, nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. So the last 6 chapters, as I mentioned, they come under the category of Gyan. And you will see something, you'll see it has a little different cadence. They are more Upanishadic. So the Upanishads are really the Gyan part of the Vedas. And they're analytical. They tend to speak in codes and require a little bit of unpacking by the help of the acharyas. So we'll see that trend in the next in the next 6 chapters. So this chapter is important because it unlocks the door that is between us and Krishna. So that's why I think the person who illustrated it put a golden key in front of Krishna's lotus feet, because Krishna is giving one kind of a key. He's already given bhakti as a key, but he's giving another yet other aspects of access to him. Okay. So because we are on a new section, I want to do a quick recap from the first chapter onwards, both as a reminder and then for the sake of continuity. So we saw in the first chapter that Arjuna refused to fight And then he gave the reasons, the 5 reasons that he would not fight. And then ultimately, at the beginning of the 2nd chapter, he surrenders to Krishna, requests for instruction. So in the 2nd chapter, we see that Krishna instructs him on the nature of the soul, Sankhya. He glorifies the importance of performing prescribed duties, karma. And then he talks about Buddhi Yoga, which is a placeholder for both Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti. So essentially, Buddhi Yoga is performing work without attachment, and one can do that both from the perspective of Nishkam and from the perspective of Bhakti. The difference is that when one performs it from the perspective of Bhakti, then the detachment really comes as a secondary aspect of the attachment to Krishna. Because one is thinking, I'm actually performing for Krishna, he is the enjoyer. So one is automatically detached from the position of being the enjoyer himself. It can also come from the perspective of the nature of the understanding of the nature of the soul. So because I'm not the body and the soul has nothing to do with the body, I have nothing to do with the activities. So he talks about Sankhya, he talks about Karmakand, he talks about Buddhi Yoga, and then finally he talks about the Sthita Pragya, that what is the symptoms of a person who is at this stage of detachment. How does he engage himself? How does he react to adversities? So after this chapter, Arjuna is still confused, because sometimes he thinks Krishna is glorifying karma. Sometimes he thinks Krishna is glorifying Gyan. So he asks for clarification. And Krishna essentially talks about the importance of acting according to your adhikar. That if your heart is not completely purified, then the purification comes from the performance of prescribed duties. If one prematurely renounces, then because of the contamination in the heart, one will fall down. So he talks about the necessity to perform prescribed duties to get this purification. And then later on, he actually says that even if you're purified, even if you're divested yourself of material desires, you still perform your prescribed duties. Why? To set an example to others. Because such people are generally glorified as leaders. And if they give up their activities, then other people who are not purified will prematurely give it, and it will cause confusion in the society. So Krishna says that still perform your prescribed duties, even if you are fully purified. And then he ends the chapter talking about the importance of not performing sinful activities. So he talks about the need to stay clear of vikarma. Then in the 4th chapter, Krishna glorifies Gyan. So the segue is that when Krishna at the end of the 3rd chapter cautioned Arjuna not to perform sinful activities, he mentioned that a person performs sinful activities out of ignorance. And the opposite of ignorance is knowledge. So the knowledge enables one to do the right thing for the right purpose. And by the practice of Gyan along with Nishkam Karma, one reaches the stage of Brahma Gyan. So this is the realization part of knowledge. So what is initially more external, academic, intellectual, it by continuous performance of working with detachment, one begins to internally realize that knowledge. and then one actually begins to exist on the platform of the soul. So we may all know that we are not the body and soul, but we are not able to act upon it because that knowledge is still external. It hasn't taken roots in our heart. But through this process of working with detachment while cultivating knowledge, one matures to Atmagyan, which is the goal of Nishkam Karma. So here we see that Arjun is still confused, and that what should I do? Should I act or should I not act? And then Krishna, he gives a very similar answer, that karma is superior to Gyan because it purifies and protects. And in order to explain this from a deeper perspective, he talks about the three doers. So he talks about the modes of material nature. He talks about the jiva, and then he talks about Krishna. So by understanding these three doers, one can reach the stage of Atmagyan. So again, this is a process that is intellectually ingested, but realized through practice. And when a person matures from the state of Atmagyan, the knowledge of the soul, the person begins to inquire about the nature of the super soul. Who else is there besides me? Who am I? Who am I working under the supervision of? And built into the inquiry of the super soul is a process of liberation. That if there is a super soul who is managing everything, then how do I attain him? What is this process of liberation? So Krishna concludes the first section talking about Astanga Yoga. So when one at the stage of inquiry into the super soul, through the process of Nishkam Karma, has already purified their heart. So they have controlled their urges by performing karma kand. They have controlled their senses by performing Nishkam Karma, and they've controlled their mind they will control the mind through the process of Astanga Yoga. So the ultimate goal of Astanga Yoga is samadhi, is to fix your mind on Krishna. But we see that Arjun, he rejects the process because he says it's very long, the chances of failure is high, mind is difficult to control. Even if you control it for some time, it will again go out of control. And Krishna agrees with Arjun, and he talks about the destination of the failed yogis. If one fails during the initial stage, then one takes birth in an opulent family. If one fails in a more advanced stage, one takes birth in the family of devotees. So after having described the path of karma, Krishna, from the 7th chapter, which is now the bhakti section, he begins to talk about himself. The first 6 chapters, the focus was mostly on the jiva. In the middle 6 chapters, the focus is mostly on Krishna. So he begins to give information about himself. What is his relationship to the material world? How can he be perceived there? Talks about the 4 kinds of people who try to know him, the 4 kinds of people who do not know him, what happens to them. And the 8th chapter is that having developed the knowledge of the absolute, how does one attain the absolute? So this chapter is essentially one of developing Krishna consciousness, especially at the time of death. Krishna makes this point that when at the time of death, one thinks of me, one comes to me. And if one thinks of anything else, one goes to that situation. But the time of death is essentially a culmination of the consciousness that you have developed during your entire life. So the 8th chapter is essentially talking about the importance of developing Krishna consciousness and attaining the supreme destination. In the 9th chapter, Krishna gives the most confidential knowledge. And this is called most confidential because he is now giving the secret of bhakti. That earlier on he was talking about the difference between the body and the soul, the nature of the soul, confidential knowledge. Then more confidential knowledge, he talks about himself. But now he says that how can you attain me? And actually it's more than that, because bhakti is not just attaining Krishna, bhakti is controlling Krishna. Prabhupada would say that devotees, they are actually more ambitious than the impersonalists. The impersonalists want to be one with Krishna. The devotees, they want to dominate Krishna. Mother Yashoda, she chastises Krishna and Krishna runs in fear from her. And Srimati Radharani, when she looks at Krishna from the side of her eyes, then Krishna loses his control. So the devotees aspire to actually have a more confidential position with Krishna. And in the later part of the chapter, Krishna gives many assurances to his devotees. That once somebody has started on the path of bhakti, there is never any loss or diminution. And Krishna is always there to protect. He openly says, I'm partial to my devotees. Even if they commit the most abominable act, he says, they will not be vanquished. So he's there to protect. So he gives many, many very sweet assurances to his devotees. In the 10th chapter, we see the famous Chatushloki, the 4 essential verses of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna summarizes the process of bhakti, where he talks about his own position. Basically, everything comes from him, everything depends on him, and everything goes into him at the time of annihilation. He talks about the mood of his devotees, Ananyas Chintayantas Mam, that they are always thinking about me, glorifying me, conversing about one another with me. And then, most important, he talks about his reciprocation. He says that then I give them the knowledge. I destroy the ignorance within them. This is the essence of the Vedas. And then in the later part of the section, when Arjuna says that how can I perceive you, Krishna talks about his opulences. That how he is the sun and the moon and the mountains, how he's the king amongst men, the lion amongst the beasts. So essentially Krishna says that whenever you see something with extraordinary qualities, you should know that it is a reflection of my opulence. I'm the essence of everything. So it's a way for us to see Krishna in matter. Because we are in this material world, we are surrounded with matter. We may not be advanced enough to see Krishna as he is, but we can perceive matter. We can see the opulence of the mountains and the rivers and the banyan trees. And then we can meditate that all this is a reflection of Krishna's opulences. In the 11th chapter, Krishna continues to reveal himself, but this time he reveals matter within him in the universal form. He shows that how everything is within him. So he shows his Kal Roop, he shows his Vishwaroop, and how he's spread across the entire space as Vishwaroop, entire time, as Kal Roop. And then at the end of the chapter, he again shows his original two-armed form, again demonstrating that the sweetest, the ultimate uh, uh, basis of everything is Krishna Swayam Bhagwan, the two-armed form of Krishna. And after showing himself in this Swayam Bhagwan feature, Krishna now talks about bhakti. He talks about devotional service, the only way that he can be achieved, and he talks about the progression of bhakti by the yoga ladder. So this is where we are from chapters 1 to 12. So before I start with the 13th chapter, I'll pause and see if there is any comments or discussion. Yes, Ravi Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the nice summary, Prabhuji. It again helps us. But Prabhuji, one question, like chapter 9, it is about the secret of bhakti, where using which one can control even Krishna. And at that time you are mentioning that attaining and with bhakti we can control, but without bhakti, is it possible to attain Krishna? And here, what does attaining means?
So Krishna talks about, and this is there in the Nectar of Devotion, the various kinds of liberation. So there is Sarupya, Salokya, Samipi, Samrishti. So depending on the mood of the devotee and depending on their aspirations, they can attain different forms of association with Krishna. They can get different moods of association in Dasya Ras or Sakhya Ras or Vatsalya Ras. So the process of bhakti is a way to attain one's original spiritual position. It's not really there to develop a new position or to acquire a new designation, but we all have an eternal relationship with Krishna, which is kind of got covered. And this process, it helps us uncover that position and resume it. And Krishna says many times that bhakti is the only way. So if you think of it more pictorially, that the gates to Krishna, whether it's Vaikuntha or Golok, only bhakti, that's the single point of entry. Now people may come to that path through different paths. Somebody might come through Karma Gyan Astang, somebody might come through Astang. So every jiva has different ways that they can come. Ultimately, but they enter only through that single. There is only one door, there is only one path, that's one.
Prabhuji, sorry to ask again, Prabhuji, because that is exactly my question, Prabhuji, that bhakti being the only way, attaining Krishna means only through bhakti it is possible. That is how that attaining in chapter 8 is different from the bhakti in chapter 9, Prabhuji. That was my question.
I don't understand. So you're saying how chapter 8 is different from chapter 9?
I mean, attaining Krishna, that is only possible through bhakti. That is the only way one can attain, meaning reach Krishna or attain Krishna. All is again getting bhakti for Krishna. So that is there in chapter 8. So the most confidential part of chapter 9 is bhakti only. So I was little confused because chapter 8 itself having bhakti.
I guess both of us are confused, Prabhu, because I have no idea what you're asking me. I'm going to park your question separately, but I feel that you don't have clarity about your own question at this point of time. So maybe you can think about it more and ask it later.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji,
Hare Krishna.
sorry, go on, please.
Go ahead, Prabhu. Pad Prabhu, please.
Okay, thank you. Now, just a comment, Prabhuji, I remember the time you started the whole Gita class. It's a conversation between we know who, right? And conversation is about communication to one person saying, other person receiving. There's bound to be confusion, clarity, and more conversation, more Q&A. And beautifully summarized in 3 sections. So third one you're going to talk about, which is Gyan. So karma and then bhakti and then Gyan, which is obviously as you said, it's a different, you use the word I like called cadence. And I'll wait to learn that, at least the essence of it. If there's a conversation through which someone at that level, Arjun's level, is understanding what Lord Krishna is trying to tell him. If I kind of not extrapolate, summarize the problem that exists in all of us is communication. Just like the question that Prabhu was asking you, the way you were responding, and also understood that there's a confusion, the question itself. So it's a conversation kind of breaking or needs to be put in the parking lot, we'll pick it up later. So it's all about conversation. So the conversation, I see the highest level of conversation is between a helpless child who's just born with his mother, or his or her mother, right? Somewhere the communication or the conversation without any word is understood and implemented, and life unfolds, right? It's almost true, not almost, it is true also for animals, right? So I call it a conversation can also take place in a silent mode without any expression. And when the conversation is perfect, or perfect in the sense when it is that level of maturity, the good stuff happens. Right? In this case, the realization of Arjun at the end of the day, at the end of the 18th chapter, must be some different level of realization. Absolutely right. And then someone at that level of Krishna is telling someone like Arjun, right? So, and if I as an individual want to attain Krishna, to come, my definition of, I'm ignorant, my definition of attainment is come as much close to him on a 7/24 mode. Now, is that, am I allowed to have a conversation with him in a manner that is natural to me? I'm not saying I will not do karma, or I will not do bhakti, or I will not understand Gita, but am I allowed to do a conversation with Lord Krishna in a most natural way, to attain him? Attain him means obviously I can never attain him, a person like me, but can I come close to him, close to him, close to him every day, every moment, trying to do, because there is a trip, there is an excitement in coming close to him. I don't know how to express that, but is that, since you also talked about a conversation in the beginning, and your every slide was also conversation so far, conversation, communication. Am I allowed to do, or am I violating the basic principle of understanding of this whole Krishna consciousness?
It's an interesting question. And I guess I can answer it at 2 levels. The first answer is an obvious resounding yes. The whole process of bhakti is having a conversation with Krishna. The second part of the answer would be yes, but because a conversation is truly valid when there are two people in play. So for me to have a conversation with you, you should exist without any doubt in my mind. If you don't exist, if I have doubts about your existence, my conversation with you will essentially become my conversation with myself, or worse, it will become my conversation with my mind. So I'll say that Pat Prabhu is saying this, and Pat Prabhu wants me to do this, but you're not there because I still haven't established a relationship with you. I'm still not friends with you, and I'm imagining. So essentially, the process of bhakti is to purify us to the point where we have access to Krishna. And the last 6 chapters actually talk about the obstacles in us having a conversation with Krishna and how to remove those obstacles. So that's essentially the difference, that if one is more, and everybody is at a different level of advancement, difficult for me to make individual evaluations, but the general understanding is that when one is in a conditioned state, one follows the regulative principles of devotional service to be restored in the place where they have now resumed their connection with Krishna. And then subsequent to that, there's no, if you look at the scriptures, the part of the scriptures that talk about bhakti, 99% of that talks about the rules and regulations of bhakti. 1% of it gives the glimpse about the activities of a pure devotee. What do they do? How do they perceive? What do they talk? And the reason is that that's something that cannot be taught. That's something that cannot be communicated. It is very fundamental. It is very experiential. It is beyond the comprehension of one who has not have direct access to it. So that's what we do. That initially we try to purify ourselves, that we become qualified to have that conversation. And essentially everything that we are doing is a form of conversation. When we chant Hare Krishna, then we are saying that Krishna, please allow us to serve you. Right? So that's, we are talking, but we are following the Vedic recommendations.
Yeah.
Right? Some person can say, why do you chant Hare Krishna? Just quote in front of Krishna and say, Krishna, please give me service, which is fine if you have faith that you're talking to Krishna, that Krishna is there listening to you. If not, then we follow the process.
Yeah.
Okay?
I just want to add that last realization. I think more and more I understanding or realizing there is a science behind this. There is nothing nobody, and whoever is saying that I can do it on my own way, on my own sweet A to Z. I'm more than ever convinced that he's just a lunatic mad person. It's like I would not go to gym, but yet my health is going to be, I'm going to be strong physically. Is nonsense. It's like reading a lot of um, health related book but without practicing anything. I think the scripture is definitely in software what we call as a reference architecture, the foundation or the basic elements. Without that, anybody can write a code and it's going to be junk code. It's going to be full of bugs. So I think more and more I'm convinced, internally convinced, that there is a science behind the scripture, and the science is obviously not understood by some idiot like me, but there is obviously it is told and communicated over generations with some gurus and rishis and all that stuff, right? And Krishna himself. So there is no semblance of doubt, at least in my mind. Number one, where I'm still, I would say, Prabhu, with your permission, that the eventual communication is so personalized, it is so inexplicably, it is so it can be only experienced, it cannot be communicated. It is slightly above the scripture, with all enormous respect and pranam to every discipline. Because so, like when you write a software, there is a uniqueness of that programmer at the end of the day, over and above all the guiding principle. So I'm just trying to understand that refinement of that conversation with Lord Krishna, particularly someone like you who is at a definitely much elevated state of affair. How do you, what do you do outside the foundation layer in terms of your conversation with him? Because you just said that the mass is coming, you said Kartik mass is coming, I will do 7-8 things, like 4 rounds of more, this. I'm sure that's fantastic. Those are only, it's like I'm doing 100 push-ups, I'll do 120 push-ups. Obviously, who's doing that is definitely more stronger and everything. So you are building that strength around you spiritually. But what do you do outside that, which is little unique to you? If I may just urge you to share it with us.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a very good question. So um, you made one point that, well, actually, you gave a wonderful analogy. With your permission, I will steal from you and use, the one about the gym. I think it's a nice way to explain things. You also made a very good second point about how the Vedas speak very little about the perfection deliberately, because it's not something that can be communicated by words. As practicing devotees, what we do is that we seek for that perfection in the reflection of Krishna in his devotees. So devotees are our first experience of Krishna in the material world. So we don't have access to Krishna, but the devotees carry Krishna in their hearts. So when we talk to devotees, serve them, exchange our thoughts with them, that's I would not say it's a trailer or it's a glimpse, but that's what will later on mature into our interaction with Krishna and his devotees in the spiritual world. And that's why we draw so much of sweetness from Vaishnava Sangha. We're careful about avoiding Vaishnava Prad, trying to focus on Vaishnava Seva, because that is our first experiential interaction with Krishna in the material world. And the interesting thing is that, and this is a mystery, that the devotees are obviously conditioned, they're mixed, but when they come together, then it is almost as if the spiritual world has been recreated. So you get for some time a microcosm of the spiritual world.
Yeah, that's a positive vibration. Like there's a teamwork, right? When you have together, I see a different vibration when you are alone.
Yes.
And that's that spirit of that teamwork. So something emerges out of that, which is never proposed by anybody, but yet it emerges. It's like a consensus, which is like you arrive at a decision which nobody has proposed, but everybody agrees.
Correct. It's Krishna's. Yeah, somehow Krishna has makes that arrangement happen.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. We had we have Ravi Prabhu. So you were waiting to clarify your question, and we have somebody else was also there, right?
Akshay Prabhu is asking.
Okay, are you ready, Ravi Prabhu, or you want to go after Akshay Prabhu?
I can ask Prabhuji, but I can wait also. Akshay Prabhu is waiting from long time.
No, you can go ahead, Ravi Prabhu. My
Sure.
question is not. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ravi Prabhu.
Okay. Prabhuji, in chapter 8, you explained the 5 factors of attaining, and also at the end, what you mentioned is like at the time of death, if one remembers Krishna, that is the way of attaining him. So at one point, I made a note also that chapter 8 speaks about mixed bhakti, Mishram bhakti, and chapter 9 Shuddha bhakti, like that. So but my confusion there is, if I could remember at the time of death Krishna, it means that that is Shuddha bhakti. So how that is different from chapter 9?
It's not, so the difference is in detail. So it's kind of like this, that let's assume you come to me and you say that I would like to get admission in MIT, right? And then I say you get an SAT score of so much, you get GPA of 4.0, you'll get admission in MIT, right? And that statement is accurate. It will definitely get you admission in MIT. But then the question comes that how do I get a good score in SAT? How do I improve my GPA? Right. So chapter 8 is showing you the penultimate path, that if you die in Krishna consciousness, you will attain Krishna. Chapter 9 tells you how can you develop that consciousness in your life, which is why it's considered even more confidential, because it is giving you access to, it is now giving you practical access to the information. It's something that now you can take home with you, and now you can start doing. So I give you a book and I say, Prabhu, every day you do these exercises. And after these exercises, your SAT score is going to be good, or whatever, it's going to be good. Now you have something that is actionable, right? Now, in a way, 9 is supporting 8. But 9 is superior to 8 because it is delivering the results of 8 to you, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. Without knowing 9, I can't get benefit out of 8, like even though I know.
Right. And Krishna does that sometimes. He gives the conclusion first, and then he does that to inspire us. He does that to like, in chapter 2, he gives us the whole summary of the Bhagavad Gita. Then he expands upon it, and then he concludes that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't get your question the first time. Akshay Prabhu?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Just one, maybe not just a curiosity. And it could be because we've just finished that section on Bhakti Yoga, or the 6 chapters. It feels that that Krishna has been emphasizing about devotion or devotional service even before those chapters, these 6 chapters. And I'm guessing that he's probably also going to direct our attention towards that particular aspect in the next or the last 6 chapters. So it almost feels like Bhakti has been the most repeated word in Bhagavad Gita, rather than even Krishna and Arjun. I might be wrong, Prabhuji, but we also know that Bhagavad Gita is a scripture or a book that teaches us Sambandha Gyan, or relationship between us and Bhagwan. But, and this is just my understanding of so far, but he has been focusing our attention towards the process, the bhakti itself throughout. So how do we understand these two things?
I guess your question has 2 parts. One part is that even though the first and the last section are not bhakti, there is still bhakti there, and that is accurate. We'll actually talk about it in one of the slides. that Bhurijan Prabhu makes exactly the same point, that beginning from the first chapter, first verse, to the 18th chapter, last verse, Krishna is speaking about bhakti. The only difference is that how pramukh is bhakti. In the first section, bhakti comes as a part of karma. In the last section, bhakti comes as a part of jnana. In the middle section, bhakti comes by itself. So actually, the acharyas say the reason that bhakti is in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita, because it is touching both. At one point, it is touching karma. At the other point, it is touching jnana. So bhakti, karma without bhakti is useless. Jnana without bhakti is useless. And the whole purpose of karma and jnana is to guide a person towards the stage of bhakti. So it's a it's a natural conclusion that Krishna will speak about bhakti. In the 4th chapter, he begins like 3rd chapter, verse 30. He starts talking about bhakti. 4th chapter, he talks again about bhakti, but intermittently there. The second question was that I guess it's a more technical question. You're saying that if Bhagavad Gita is about Sambandha Gyan and Bhakti is Abhideya, then how do you reconcile the two? Is that what your question? Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So in the Bhagavad Gita, so the purpose of, if you look at what Sambandha Gyan is establishing the relationship between, or understanding the relationship between two people. The what part, Abhideya is the how to part, and Prayojan is the maturity of it. So scriptures that talk about Abhideya, they talk about how to practice bhakti. So in the Bhakti Shastri, you did the Nectar of Instruction. That's a book on Abhideya, where there are specifically do's and don'ts that you follow, you suppress these 6 urges, you follow these 6 things, you interact with devotees in these specific ways. So they already assume that you have accepted the supremacy of bhakti. Now you would like to put it in action in your day-to-day life. Whether it is deity worship, whether it is chanting, whether it is dealing with other Vaishnavas, that is elaborated in Abhideya. Now, in as part of Sambandh, Krishna is essentially giving the segue to Abhideya. He's saying, your relationship with me is of this kind. I'm the master, you're the servitor. We have a relationship that you serve me. And the name of this relationship is bhakti. So he's giving us the description of the relationship. He does not talk that much about the execution of bhakti. There are glimpses of it, right? He says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhakti Prashyati.
Right.
But they are mostly to emphasize on the nature of the bhakti, not so much on the details of the execution of bhakti.
Sure. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your questions. So let me move forward to the 13th chapter now. So in the in the last section, Krishna is going to fulfill his promise that he made in the 12th chapter, that Krishna says that I will save you from the path of birth and death. So essentially, this section is talking to the embodied souls like us, one who are vested in the material world. How can we divest ourselves and divert our attention from matter to Krishna. So what is the need of this gyan? So as we have just now discussed, that Krishna concluded the description of the middle section with bhakti. Now he will describe gyan. And then one may ask that if bhakti is the culmination of the yoga ladder, which he has already made, then why is gyan presented after the section of bhakti? So, and this is a more direct answer to Akshay Prabhu's question, that we may call this section notionally as Gyan, but in truth, entire Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti. The first 6 chapters, how to achieve Bhakti through one's work. Last 6 chapters, how to achieve Bhakti through knowledge. And middle 6 chapters is Bhakti itself. So it's not a departure. It's not Krishna is saying that even though yoga ladder culminates in Bhakti, let me take you back. He's still talking about Bhakti. Even in the first 6 chapters, he's still talking about Bhakti. He's talking about how to attain Bhakti. And the middle section talks about one who has attained Bhakti. That's the only difference. So specifically, Krishna presents Gyan to detach from the material world. And this is important. It actually feeds into the question that Pat Prabhu had asked, that do we have the adhikar or the right to have a conversation with Krishna? As long as we are materially contaminated, no. If we pretend to have a conversation, it will be something else. It won't be a conversation with Krishna. But then how do we get that knowledge to detach ourselves from the material conception? So this is the focus of these 6 chapters. These 6 chapters will look more into our attachment to the material world. Because essentially speaking, the nature of the soul is to develop attachment. Right now, it has developed attachment to the material world. And the process of making spiritual progress is to convert that attachment to detachment from the material world and attachment to Krishna. So this section will talk about how to become detached from the material world. And in great part, it will explain the workings of the material world. What is it that captures us? Because it's said that if you're bound by a rope, if you understand the nature of the knots that are tied, sometimes these knots are so difficult that the more you pull the rope, the more the knots get tightened. But if you understand how the ropes are wrapped around making these knots, then you can untie the knot. That's what this section will give you. It'll explain to you the nature of these knots. How does the conditioned soul get attached to that which is not intrinsic to it? And then you can use that knowledge. And then the same point that's made again, I made that without bhakti, both karma and jnana are useless. So which is why bhakti comes in the middle, because it can touch both karma and jnana, and thus it lends them value. So Bhagavad Gita doesn't talk about karma and jnana per se. It talks about karma in the context of bhakti and jnana in the context of bhakti. So the chapter has 3 sections. It has the inquiries by Arjun, then the process of knowledge and the object of knowledge. I'll cover this not in a sequential order just because the chapter is a little complicated. So I'll do section 1, section 3, and then section 2, just to keep the continuity of the thought. So the mnemonic is IPO, the inquiries by Krishna, the process of knowledge, and the object of knowledge. So Arjun's inquiries at the beginning of this chapter is that bhakti is so sweet and potent. Krishna is happy about it, the practitioner is happy about it. So why doesn't everyone take to it? What's the problem? And wrapped into this are these implicit questions, that what is it that attracts the conditioned soul so much that they have no time for bhakti? What is material nature? Same question put a little bit different. What is the object of their attraction? And then question these notions further expanded. So the first two are not actual questions, but they are the underlying thought behind the question. Arjun actually asked 6 questions, and because we are not studying the chapter from a very analytical perspective, so I'm summarizing them from the perspective of what is it that he actually wants to ask. So he's asking that what is the source of this enjoyment that diverts the mind of the soul away from Krishna? Then how does this enjoyment actually happen? How does the person actually enjoy separate from Krishna? And then, of course, how to reverse that process, how to become a devotee. So these are the summation of the 6 questions that Arjun asks. So Krishna then begins to explain he begins to answer the essence behind what Arjun has asked. So there is the spirit soul. Now we are of course talking about the spirit soul in the material world. So there's a soul, it's purely spiritual, but it's come to the material world for whatever reasons. And then there is material nature. There is Prakriti. There. The nature of the soul is spirit. The nature of Prakriti is matter. So there is no way that they can interact. So then what does the soul do? It takes a material body. Because the soul is spirit, and what it's trying to enjoy is matter. So it recognizes that I can't enjoy matter, but let me take a material body. It's kind of like you go to see a 3D movie, you know you can't see it unless you put glasses on. So the soul says, let me take a material body. So it takes a material body. But the soul is still not able to enjoy because it has no understanding of matter. It does not know how to enjoy through the body. Ravindra Sarvprabhu makes this point that everybody is looking for aliens in this world. What they don't realize that we are the ultimate aliens. We have come from another world and we are aliens in this world. So like when you have this caricature of going into Mars and you have to have, or moon, you have to have a space suit and you have to have special breathing equipment, because you're not, by nature, you're not from moon. So you can't survive there. You have no idea how to exist over there. So that's why you take on this suit. But in this case, the soul does not even know how to operate this suit. It has taken this suit on, but has no idea, because the suit is also matter, doesn't know how to operate it. So then what happens? Krishna appears. Krishna says, I will help you. So Krishna appears as Paramatma, and he takes all the desires of the soul to enjoy this material nature and operates the material body in a way to serve the desires of the soul. So when we see this, we also get an understanding of the nature of Krishna's mercy. That these are the souls that have rejected Krishna. that have said that I don't want to enjoy with you. I want to enjoy separately. But they're not able to. And Krishna says, okay, so if that is what you want, let me help you. So as Paramatma, he's sitting with the soul. He is looking at all the desires of the soul. He is the one that is interfacing between the spirit, soul, and the material body. Now Krishna is also spirit, but Krishna is Krishna. He can do everything. Even matter is under his control. So he can manipulate matter. He can get the senses to engage, and he gives all that. Through him, the soul acquires all that ability. So this is the knowledge that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. That this is the nature of your entanglement. That you're a pure spirit soul. You have come down here to enjoy matter. Because of that, you have taken a body. And to help you enjoy, to make it possible, I have come along with you as Paramatma. And the essence of the logic is that the Paramatma is responding to the desires of the souls. If today the soul desires that I don't want to enjoy matter, I want to enjoy with Krishna, then that's what the Paramatma will do. So buried in this explanation of the engagement is also the process of disengagement. So let's understand this tattva a little bit. I kind of spoke about it, that the jiva attempts to enjoy material nature, and then it's not able to do so. So the jiva takes the position of a purusha. So these are some of the technical words. It's good to know that Krishna uses. Purusha literally means enjoy. And as a purusha, its main desire is to enjoy prakriti. The prakriti also means object of enjoyment. And in order to enjoy, the purusha, the jiva, takes on a material body which is called kshetra. And within that, the jiva enjoys as the kshetragya. So because of the intervention of the super soul, the jiva has awareness of what is happening in the kshetra, what is happening in my body. I eat something sumptuous. I am the one who's enjoying it. But the point is that I can only enjoy my own body. If somebody else is eating sumptuous food, I cannot get that enjoyment. And then Krishna says that I am also the Purusha. But the difference between you and me is that I am not restricted to one particular body. I am the supreme enjoyer. So the understanding is that the intrinsic nature of the soul is to be enjoyed. And in bhakti, that is what we aspire to attain, the position of serving. Serving means that we deprecate our own needs and desires in order to serve somebody else. That is being enjoyed. Now, of course, from a material perspective, it looks like it is demeaning, demoralizing. But actually, in the spiritual perspective, this is the highest state. Because when Krishna is enjoying, then the enjoyment that the soul experiences is beyond compare. But the point that Krishna is making is that you are all in this conditioned state, minor, small purushas, trying to enjoy in these small bodies that you have. And that also because of my arrangement. But know that I am the original Purusha. And when you are established in that relationship, that my kshetra is the entire existence, not just one body, but my kshetra is the whole material and spiritual world. Everything in existence is my kshetra. And when you understand that, that's when you will be liberated. So the knowledge that is being given is understanding this distinction between Krishna and Jiva. And the object of knowledge is that only Krishna has that position. Only Krishna is Purusha. And everybody else is meant to be enjoyed by Krishna. So, so far, Krishna has been talking about how to reach him through the path of bhakti. And even though bhakti in itself is potent to overcome any obstacles, not everyone can avail to its potency. So this is why Arjuna is being pragmatic. He understands that there are people who are so trapped within their body, within their senses. So what can they do? Even for people who are trying to make advancements, the people who are practicing devotees, even they are in the material conception. So Arjuna is asking that how do I, while engaging with you, Krishna, how can I disengage with matter? So many analogies are used to explain it, that when a boat has an anchor, it is difficult to row it. So practicing devotees, they're practicing bhakti. So they're rowing the boat, but the anchor is down. So that attraction to matter is slowing them down. But when one understands the nature of this, when somebody tells and says that the reason that your boat's not going so fast is because you have an anchor over there, and this is how you pull it out. So once they pull it out, then with the same effort, the boat moves much more quickly. So this is the second part of the section, essentially the main part of the section. The third part of the section is Krishna talking about the process of knowledge. So the point that Arjun asks is that how do I develop this detachment from the material conception? And Krishna talks about 20 qualities. At the pinnacle of the quality of this is, Krishna says, Ananya Bhakti, constant and unalloyed devotion. So just by this quality, all other qualities will manifest. But then obviously Krishna is giving the other 19 qualities because he also expects us to try and develop these qualities, because we will not reach the state of Ananya Bhakti directly. It's a process. So he talks about other qualities: acceptance of a spiritual master, accepting the importance of self-realization, the philosophical search of absolute truth, renunciation, self-control, humility, pridelessness. So all of these are all qualities that he says that are conducive to making spiritual advancements. So these are qualities that one can cultivate actively. And also, these are qualities that will begin to manifest when one is practicing devotion. So from both perspectives, Krishna says this. So let's assume somebody is practicing bhakti. And because of the process of bhakti, the person begins to develop humility. The person begins to the presence of false ego diminishes. The need for the philosophical search for the absolute truth, it increases. Other things like cleanliness, simplicity, tolerance, steadiness, non-violence, these qualities begin to appear. So the person knows that yes, the knots that are tying me to this material world are now getting loosened, and I'm making progress. show both ways, that these qualities begin to manifest in one who's practicing bhakti, and one who develops these qualities is also now more, he's more potent in taking to the process of bhakti. So, summation, like Arjuna asks Krishna 6 questions, trying to understand why everyone does not take to bhakti. Krishna answers it analytically, explaining the nature of the entanglement of the spirit soul in the material world. And this is the entanglement, that the jiva, looking to enjoy the material world, accepts a body. And through this body, he enjoys the material nature. But then Krishna says that even in this conditioned state, he is there, he's helping. And when one understands that Krishna is the supreme knower and the enjoyer, then one begins to understand the need to surrender to Krishna. So the real purpose of explaining this entanglement is to understand how to disentangle. And then he talks about cultivation of conducive qualities. The most important quality is that of bhakti, and vice versa. The manifestation of these qualities are also symptoms of bhakti or disengagement. So the verse to memorize, this verse talks about the super soul, upadrastanu mantascha, varta bhokta maheshwara, paramatmeti chapyukto, teyasmin purushopara. But yet in this body, there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and the permitter, and who is known as the super soul. So this is the relationship of the Paramatma with the Atma, the super soul with the soul, through which the soul is able to enjoy. So, Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara, that he is the one who is fulfilling the desires of everyone, and he is the super soul. The 3 sections: the inquiries, the process of knowledge, the object of knowledge. Why does Arjuna request clarification? Because why don't people take to the process of bhakti? What is Purusha, Prakriti, and Kshetra? Purusha is the enjoyer. In the conditioned state, the jiva thinks he is the Purusha, but actually Krishna is the only Purusha. Prakriti is material nature. That is an object of enjoyment. And Kshetra is the field of enjoyment, the body which the jiva takes. What is Kshetragya, Gyan, and Geyam? So these are actually the 6 questions asked between 3 and 4. So Kshetragya is jiva. So the jiva knows the body, and Krishna is the ultimate Kshetragya. He knows everything. And Gyan is knowing the difference. Gyan is understanding who is Purusha, who is Prakriti, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetragya. And Geyam, the object of knowledge, is Krishna. So what is the process of knowledge? The process of knowledge is developing qualities suitable to spiritual advancements. What quality does Krishna appreciate the most? This is no surprise, being fixed in devotion to him. So this is the end of the chapter. So I'll pause over here and see if we have any discussions on this part.
A small clarification, Prabhu. If I articulate slightly differently, if he is in everything and everything in him, when you say he's the ultimate enjoyer, Lord Krishna, and the soul or the little Atma that is there within us, that's also part of that Paramatma. What is Krishna trying to do? What is he trying? What is what is what is he's what is he what does he want? Because he can do anything. I mean, he doesn't need anybody's permission. He doesn't need any validation. What is he wanting from us, other than the karma and dharma and everything, devotions? All that is obviously understood. But what is he wanting us to do other than that? Or that's all he wants us to do?
Not really. It's a good question. So I guess ultimately, when you condense it to a single question, what does Krishna want from us? Krishna wants our love. That's the only thing that he wants. So, so one of the the conundrums is that Krishna is complete, but he's incomplete without our love. So every living entity, so there are unlimited jivas, but Krishna has a place for each and every jiva. It's said that when we are over here, then Krishna is missing us. And the nature of the relationship is that it is mutually satisfying. It satisfies us, it satisfies Krishna. So yes, to some extent, Krishna may have a personal agenda, that if I am very much in love with somebody and that person is gone, I'm trying to get the person back because I love. That's true. But because the nature of the thing is that when the person is back with me, the person is also happy. So it's something that is mutually satisfying. Prabhupada would give the example of loving parents and a son. That the son became rebellious and left. The parents, their affection for the son. Till the time the son's not in the house, they're missing the son. So they'll do everything to get the son back. And they know that when the son is back, so he's out there and he's doing all kinds of nonsense activities. He's suffering. He's trying to look for happiness in the wrong places. And they know that when he's back home, and then with his brothers and sisters, he'll be happy. So that's at the end of the day, that's what Krishna is trying to do. So Krishna is simple. We are complicated. That's why he has to complicate things. He could have told us this simply, that I love you, I miss you, come back. Right? That's the whole. So, but we are complicated. And we are like, okay, if you love me, then give me $1 million. And Krishna will say, but look, this $1 million is not really going to help you. Why won't it help me? It will give me a better car. It will get me this. Yeah, but even if you get that, you'll die. Yeah, but if I die, maybe I can go to heaven. What about that? So then the conversation becomes more complicated. Krishna starts answering all those questions there. And he also has to answer them in a way that ultimately the basic question always stays there. That please come back to us, come back to me. Yeah, that helps.
Very, very. Thank you. Very well. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, because I think he's missing us more than we are missing him.
Yes, yes. That is absolutely right. And Sanatana Goswami's Brad Bhagavatamrita, and he's an exalted soul, so he's writing from realization. He talks about the journey of a conditioned soul back to Krishna. And he says that when the soul gets liberated and returns to Krishna, and when Krishna sees the soul, he actually faints with happiness. So the pleasure that Krishna has in seeing us back, and the pain that he is missing us, is a lot more. So when a son leaves the house and he has temporary amnesia, then he's like, he didn't even know that he has a father missing him. Krishna doesn't have amnesia. He remembers. He remembers the relationship. He remembers the love. So yeah.
That's a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments?
Interesting.
Okay. If not, then we will have our kirtaniyas do the Narsingadev prayer. Dhaval Prabhu, who did you say is going to do Narsingadev?
Srija and Ishani.
Shreja and Ishani. Are they there? Shreja, Ishani?
Was it Shrija and Shani or was it?
I
Yeah.
thought
No, sorry. It was Nayushi and Ishi. Sorry.
that's what I think you
Yeah,
told
yeah.
me, but
Yeah. I'm sorry. It was
Okay.
Ishi and Nayushi.
I see Naoshi. I see Naoshi.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, Sunil Prabhu.
Jitendra Prabhu.
Yep.
Yeah, Jiten Prabhu. Thank you.
Chalo.
wait, should I start?
Yes.
Okay.
Chalo.
Hare Krishna, Nayushi.
Hare Krishna.
Let's start.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Namaste Narasimhaya.
You can continue. We're not
I
gonna
thought you
take-
were going to. I thought you were going to repeat it. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladalaine. Idona Hiranyaka. Shipurvakshaha. Shilatanka Nagalaye. Ito nashima parito nashima. Yato yami tato nashima. Hadbahe nashima. Hiride nashima. Narishim prapadim. Sharanam prapadim. Tavakama